The words had barely left her lips when Monica turned on her heel, her face contorted with rage. In a flash, she raised her hand and slapped Lily twice across the face, the sharp sound echoing in the room. "Don't you ever in your life speak to me in that manner again," Monica hissed, her voice a deadly whisper. Lily's cheeks stung, but the pain was nothing compared to the sting of betrayal and disappointment she felt toward her mother. That confrontation had marked a turning point, the culmination of years of tension and unspoken resentment. Monica's ultimatum had only solidified Lily's resolve to carve out her own path, away from her mother's suffocating expectations. Now, as she packed her belongings, Lily felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the fractured relationship with her mother, and relief that she was finally taking control of her own life. She glanced around her room one last time, memories of happier times flashing through her mind, and then she closed her suitcase with a determined click. It was time to move forward, to build a life on her own terms, and to fight for the love she had found in Edward. When Edward found out about Lily's latest predicament, he wasn't pleased at all. He listened carefully as she recounted the heated exchange with her mother, but instead of agreeing with her decision to move out, he surprised her with his reaction. "We need to go apologize to your mother," Edward said firmly, his voice calm but resolute. Lily blinked in disbelief. "Apologize? Edward, did you not hear what I just told you? She slapped me and then gave me an ultimatum to either marry a man of her choice or leave the house." "I heard you, Lily," Edward replied, his eyes steady on hers. "But if we're going to have a future that involves both of our families, we have to do things the right way. That means not disregarding the roles your parents play in your life, no matter how unreasonable they might seem." Lily was taken aback by Edward's stance. A mix of frustration and admiration welled up within her. She didn't like the idea of apologizing, especially when she felt she had done nothing wrong. But seeing Edward stand firm, even after hearing about her mother's plans to marry her off to another man, only deepened her respect for him. His commitment to honoring their parents, despite everything, spoke volumes about his character. But she still made an attempt to bring him to her side. "Edward, you don't understand," she said, her voice edged with frustration. She was hesitant to reveal the full extent of her mother's disdain for Edward, knowing it would only hurt him more. No matter how angry she was at her mom, she couldn't bring herself to disclose everything. There were boundaries she was unwilling to cross, both for Edward's sake and out of some lingering sense of loyalty to her mother. "I know your mom can be overreaching sometimes," Edward continued, his tone softening. "But I know what it means to not have a mother. I don't want you to lose yours while she's still alive. There's no replacing that." Lily felt her resolve start to crumble. She knew Edward was speaking from a place of personal loss, and his words cut through her anger. He had never had the chance to reconcile with his own parents. His mother had passed away, and his father had abandoned them. She couldn't deny the truth in his words. If she pushed her mother away now, there might be no coming back. Taking a deep breath, Lily nodded. "All right, Edward, we'll go apologize, but I hope you're ready for whatever comes next. My mom is not an easy person to please." Edward gave her a reassuring smile. "We'll face it together. Whatever happens, we'll handle it." With a reluctant heart but a newfound determination, Lily agreed to Edward's plan. They would go to her mother, seek forgiveness, and try to gain her approval for their relationship. It wasn't going to be easy, but for Edward's sake, and for the love they shared, she was willing to try. Edward and Lily decided to visit Monica the following weekend. Lily was nervous, her palms damp with sweat as they made their way to her parents' house. She knew this wouldn't be an easy conversation, but she hoped that Edward's sincerity and humility would soften her mother's stance. Monica was sitting in the living room when they arrived, her face a tight mask of disapproval. The tension in the room was palpable, a heavy cloud hanging over them as Edward and Lily stood before her. "Good evening, Ma," Edward greeted politely, bowing his head slightly out of respect. "Thank you for seeing us today." Monica looked at him coldly, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want?" she asked bluntly. Edward took a deep breath and glanced at Lily, who nodded for him to continue. I wanted to apologize for any offense I may have caused you and to seek your blessing for my relationship with Lily. I care deeply for her, and I want to do things the right way, with your approval. Monica scoffed, her lips curling into a sneer. My approval? She repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You think I'd approve of my daughter wasting her life on someone like you? Edward's face fell slightly, but he kept his composure. I understand that you have concerns, Ma, but I promise you, I will always take care of Lily and... Like your father took care of you? Monica cut him off sharply, her eyes flashing with contempt. Don't talk to me about promises. Your father abandoned your family, left little children to fend for themselves. Who's to say you won't do the same? It's in your blood, isn't it? Lily gasped, shocked by the harshness of her mother's words. Mom, that's not fair. Edward is nothing like his father. But Monica was unrelenting. You think so? She snapped. Men like him don't change. They come from nothing, and they'll always be nothing. I won't have my daughter throwing away her future on a man with no prospects, no background, and no integrity. Each word from Monica was like a dagger to Edward's heart. He felt a familiar sting of shame, a deep-rooted pain he thought he had buried long ago. His father's abandonment had always been a source of insecurity for him, a wound that never fully healed. Hearing Monica compare him to the man who had deserted him and his family reopened that wound in the cruelest way. For a moment, Edward stood there, silent, the weight of Monica's words settling over him. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't find the words. His throat felt tight, his chest heavy with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Lily reached out to touch his arm, but Edward stepped back, his expression conflicted. I'm sorry, Ma, he finally managed to say, his voice strained. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just wanted to do right by Lily. Monica's expression didn't soften. If you truly want to do right by her, then you'll leave her alone. Let her find someone who can offer her a real future, not the same fate as you and your sisters. Edward nodded slowly, his heart sinking. He knew when he wasn't wanted, and it was clear that Monica would never accept him. I understand, he said quietly. Thank you for your time, Ma. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the house, his shoulders heavy with the weight of her rejection. Lily watched him go, torn between staying to confront her mother and running after him. Mom, how could you say that? She demanded, tears welling up in her eyes. Edward is a good man. He's nothing like his father. Maybe so, Monica replied coldly, but he'll never be good enough for you. Lily didn't bother responding. She rushed out after Edward, finding him standing by his car, staring blankly ahead. Edward, she called softly, but he didn't turn around. Maybe your mom is right, Edward said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe I'm not good enough for you, Lily. I don't want you to suffer because of me. Don't say that, Lily protested, grabbing his arm. You know that's not true. My mom doesn't know you like I do. Edward shook his head, still not looking at her. But she has a point. What if I end up like my father? What if I can't give you the life you deserve? Lily's heart broke seeing the pain etched on his face. Edward, you're not your father. You've done so much already, sacrificed so much for your sisters, for everyone you care about. I love you for who you are, not for what you have or don't have. But Edward couldn't shake Monica's words from his mind. I need time to think, he said, his voice choked with emotion. I'm sorry, Lily. I need to be alone right now. Lily wanted to argue, to make him see that he was more than his past, but she knew he needed space. Okay, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. But please, don't let her words destroy what we have. Edward nodded slightly before getting into his car and driving away, leaving Lily standing there watching him go with a heavy heart. Over the next few weeks, Edward withdrew into himself, consumed by doubt and insecurity. Monica's harsh words had shaken him to his core, dredging up old fears and insecurities he thought he had buried. He began to pull back from Lily, canceling plans and avoiding her calls, not wanting to burden her with his doubts. Lily, on the other hand, felt lost without him. She understood why he was struggling, but it hurt to see him push her away. She tried to be patient, giving him the space he asked for, but every day without him felt like an eternity. Eventually, the strain became too much. One evening, after another canceled date, Lily decided she couldn't wait any longer. She went to Edward's apartment, determined to talk to him, to remind him that he wasn't alone. When Edward opened the door and saw her standing there, her eyes full of worry and love, he felt a rush of emotions. He knew he had been pushing her away, but seeing her now, he realized how much he needed her. "Lily, Please don't say you're not good enough for me," she interrupted, stepping inside. "Because that's not true. I don't care what my mom said. I love you, Edward, and I'm not going to let her words destroy us." Edward's resolve crumbled at her words. He pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry." Lily held him close, her own tears falling freely. "We'll get through this together," she said softly. "I'm not going anywhere, no matter what anyone says. We'll prove them wrong. We'll prove them all wrong." In that moment, Edward realized that despite the doubts and fears that Monica had stirred up, he couldn't let them dictate his life. He had already come so far, and with Lily by his side, he knew he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would forge their own path, defying the expectations and judgments of others, proving that love, understanding, and perseverance were stronger than any words of doubt. Emily had arrived home just in time to hear the emotional exchange between him and Lily. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but as she stood outside the slightly ajar door, she couldn't help but listen. Each word struck her like a blow, and she clenched her fists, her anger mounting with every passing second. Edward had always been her rock, her big brother who had stepped into a role far beyond his years when their father abandoned them. Hearing how much Monica's cruel words had affected him, and how deeply he still carried the weight of their father's betrayal, Emily felt a surge of protectiveness and fury. When Lily left that night, Emily slipped in quietly, her mind racing. She couldn't let this go. She knew she had to confront the man who had caused so much pain, the man who had disappeared from their lives without a word, leaving them to fend for themselves. The next day at the hospital, Emily went straight to the records room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she searched through the files until she found the one she was looking for, Mr. Andrew Ikechukwu. She had recognized him months ago when he was admitted for heart surgery. Despite the years that had passed, his face had been unmistakable. But she had maintained her professionalism, treating him like any other patient, refusing to acknowledge the shared history between them. She had buried her emotions deep, but now, everything came rushing back with a vengeance. Emily quickly scribbled down his contact number from his file and stormed out of the room. She found a quiet corner in the hospital garden, away from the prying eyes and ears of colleagues and patients, and dialed the number with trembling fingers. It rang twice before a voice on the other end answered, a voice she hadn't heard in over 2 decades, but instantly recognized. "Hello?" Emily's breath hitched for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Is this Andrew Ikechukwu?" she asked, her voice cold. "Yes, this is he. Who's speaking?" Andrew replied, sounding confused. "It's Emily," she said sharply. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a stunned silence. "Emily?" he finally managed to say, his voice thick with disbelief. "Is it really you?" "Yes, it's me," she snapped, her anger boiling over. "Your daughter, the one you abandoned 23 years ago." Andrew was silent, his breath audible over the phone. "Emily, Save it," Emily interrupted, not wanting to hear whatever excuse he was about to offer. "Do you have any idea what you put us through? What you put Edward through?" "Emily, please let me—" "No!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the empty garden. "You don't get to explain anything to me. Do you know that Edward is still paying for your mistakes? He's still dealing with the consequences of your cowardice and your selfishness? Emily, I'm so sorry, Andrew said, his voice breaking. I've regretted it every day of my life. I wanted to come back, but I was too ashamed. Ashamed, Emily screamed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. A shame doesn't feed a family. A shame doesn't keep the lights on or put food on the table. A shame doesn't raise 3 children on its own. Edward had to become a man long before he should have, all because you ran away from your responsibilities. I know I failed you all, Andrew said, his voice barely a whisper now. I know I can't make up for the past, but Edward had to do jobs no child should ever have to do just to survive, Emily continued, ignoring his attempts to speak. He sacrificed his education, his childhood, his dreams because of you. And even now, when he's finally found someone he loves, he's being judged and insulted because of you. Because of what you did. There was another silence, this one longer and heavier. Emily could hear her father's labored breathing, could imagine the pain on his face, but she felt no sympathy. Not anymore. Emily, I'm so sorry, Andrew finally said, his voice trembling. I wish I could change the past, but I can't. All I can do now is beg for your forgiveness and hope that one day, you, Chi-Chi, and Edward can forgive me. Forgiveness? Emily repeated, her voice hollow. Do you think forgiveness will undo all the years of struggle and pain? Do you think it will make up for everything Edward lost because of you? I know it won't, Andrew said, his voice breaking. I know I can't change what happened, but please, Emily, I want to try to make amends. I want to be there for you, for Edward. It's too late for that, Emily said, her voice icy. We don't need you anymore. We've built our lives without you, and we don't want anything from you now. Emily, please. No, she cut him off. You had your chance to be a father and you threw it away. You're just a stranger to us now. I just called so you understand the gravity of your selfishness and cowardice. And with that, she hung up, her hands shaking with anger, and the sting of old wounds reopened. As she stood there, breathing heavily, Emily felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She had finally said everything she needed to say, but it didn't bring the closure she thought it would. Instead, it left her feeling emptier, the weight of her father's abandonment still heavy on her shoulders. Later that evening, she went to see Edward, who was sitting on his small balcony, staring out at the city skyline. He looked up as she approached, his face weary. What's wrong? He asked, immediately sensing her distress. I called him, Emily said simply, sitting down beside him. You called who? He asked, standing up to hold her because she was beginning to shake. His heart lurched in his chest as fear and panic rose up inside him as Emily began to cry uncontrollably. His thoughts running every each way, trying to decode that singular statement. Who did she call, and why did that call unhinged her this way? He pondered worriedly. When Emily collected herself, she narrated how she met their dad at the hospital and what prompted her to call him after denying him at the hospital. Edward's eyes widened. You called Dad? Still feeling incredulous after her narration, Emily nodded, her expression hard. I couldn't take it anymore, Edward. After everything that happened, after hearing what Lily's mom said about you, I had to confront him. Edward looked down, his shoulders slumping. What did he say? He said he was sorry, Emily replied bitterly. He said he regrets leaving us, but it doesn't change anything, does it? Edward was silent for a moment, relieved that she wasn't hurt in any new way. Then he shook his head. No, it doesn't. But I understand why you did it. Emily sighed, leaning back against the chair. I wish things were different. I wish we didn't have to keep carrying this weight. Edward nodded, reaching over to take her hand. I know, but we've got each other, right? And we've made it this far without him. We'll keep going. Emily squeezed his hand, grateful for his steady presence. Despite everything, she knew they would get through this. Please don't tell Chi-Chi about this, Edward said after a brief silence. Of course, Emily exclaimed. She must not find out. With this mutual agreement, they stayed together, holding each other as their minds tried to heal itself from the pain of the past. Edward's day had been going smoothly until his secretary announced that a man named Andrew Ikechukwu was in the lobby asking to see him. Edward's heart sank. The man who had abandoned him, Emily, and Chichi all those years ago. The same man who had recently tried to apologize through Emily, only to be coldly rejected. Edward felt a surge of anger, but he also felt a deep sense of resignation. What more could he possibly want now? "Send him in," Edward said curtly, sitting up straighter in his chair. When Andrew walked into Edward's office, he looked older than Edward remembered from his childhood. His hair was mostly gray, and his face was lined with deep wrinkles. There was a hesitant, almost apologetic look in his eyes, a stark contrast to the stern, authoritative father Edward remembered from his youth. "Edward," Andrew began, his voice trembling slightly, "thank you for seeing me. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to come here and speak to you face to face. I need you to understand why I left, why I stayed away." Edward listened, his face expressionless. He had waited over 2 decades for an explanation, but now that it was here, he found that he didn't really care anymore. Andrew continued, his voice wavering as he spoke. "I made a mistake. One of many, I know. But back then, I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. I was young, scared, and, well, I was wrong. After I left, I wanted to come back so many times, but every time I tried, the shame was too much. I knew I had failed as a father, and I couldn't face you or your sister. I thought you were better off without me." Edward's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. He wanted his father to finish, to say whatever he had come to say. "I've regretted it every day," Andrew went on, his voice breaking. "I've seen how much pain my actions caused you and your sister, and I know I can't change the past, but I want to try to make amends now. I want to be a part of your lives again, if you'll let me." Edward looked at his father, feeling a mixture of anger and pity. "Are you finished?" he asked, his tone cold. Andrew's face fell. I guess I am," he said quietly. "Then please leave my office," Edward said firmly. "I have nothing more to say to you." Andrew's shoulders slumped as he realized that his son was not ready to forgive him. He nodded, swallowing hard as he turned to leave the office. As he walked out, he felt the weight of his guilt heavier than ever. He had hoped for a different outcome, but he knew that reconciliation would not come easily, if at all. Lost in thought as he walked down the hallway, Andrew didn't notice Lily coming up from the opposite direction. They collided, Lily's purse falling to the ground with a clatter. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Lily exclaimed, bending down to pick up her purse. She looked up at Andrew, and her face registered surprise when she saw the look of recognition in his eyes. "You must be Lily," Andrew said softly, a small smile appearing on his lips. Lily looked confused. "Yes, I am. Do I know you?" "I'm Andrew Ikechukwu," he replied, holding out his hand. Edward's father. Lily's eyes widened in shock, recognizing him now. She shook his hand cautiously, unsure of what to say. I didn't expect to meet you here," she stammered. Andrew nodded, a sad smile on his face. "I came to speak with Edward, to try and explain myself, but I don't think he's ready to hear me out just yet." Lily could see the pain in Andrew's eyes, and despite everything, she felt a pang of sympathy for him, and made a spontaneous decision, praying that Edward will forgive her if he finds out. "Mr. Ikechukwu," she said gently, "I know this is difficult for you, and for Edward. He's been through a lot because of what happened. But if you really want to make things right, maybe there's something you can do to help." Andrew looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Lily hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Let's go somewhere else," she said after a round. She sent a message to Edward canceling their lunch date, but promised him dinner, citing work as an excuse. Edward had accepted telling her to take it easy. She had felt guilty for lying to him, but she felt what was doing was worth it. They were now at a cafe now, and she wasted no time in getting to the point. Edward and I are in a relationship, but we are having some trouble with my parents. They don't approve of our relationship, partly because of your past. They see you as an irresponsible man who abandoned his family, and they think Edward might do the same. If you want to salvage your relationship with Edward, maybe you could start by showing my parents that you've changed, that you're not the same person you were all those years ago. Andrew listened intently, nodding as she spoke. I understand, he said slowly. I want to do whatever I can to help. How can I approach your parents? Lily thought for a moment.